You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is the Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is presented by the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw people have a rich history and a bright future. At the Choctaw Cultural Center, you can take part in a story 14,000 years in the making. Stroll through our immersive exhibits portraying Choctaw life from the moment our ancestors emerged from the Nani Weha in Mississippian homelands to the Trail of Tears, where we lost so many loved ones, and finally to the modern-day tribe making a positive impact on local communities throughout southeastern Oklahoma. Try your hand at our social dancing and stickball and learn more about our vibrant culture through demonstrations, workshops, and classes. The kids will have a blast in our Luxie Activity Center. The Choctaw Cultural Center is more than a museum. It's a living, breathing experience. Visit choctawculturalcenter.com to plan your visit. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us on August 11th at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum for a celebration of hope featuring guest speaker Tim Tebow and musical artist Ben Fuller. Find out more and get your tickets at HIA10.com. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Return guest today, Mr. Lance Lang from Hope is Alive. You know, I checked the last time you were on the podcast, and it was almost exactly 2 years ago to the day.
I was thinking about that this morning because I'm in like a winter pullover.
Yeah.
And I think the last time we talked, it was summertime and it was hot.
It was 6/5/21.
Yes, exactly.
So fairly close. A long time ago. But for people listening, like, you know, if you want to go back and listen to your full backstory, I'll link that in the description. They can go back and listen to that. But if people haven't listened to that episode, give us a little recap of kind of who you are, what you do, and then why you got into the whole Hope is Alive stuff.
Lance Lang, founder, executive director, Hope is Alive. We're celebrating 10 years as an organization this year. But to get you kind of how I got to this place, you know, I'm an Oklahoma guy, born and raised Pryor, Oklahoma. Found my way to Oklahoma City about 15 years ago. And about the time that I made it here, I began to struggle really heavily with opiates. I could tell you the whole backstory of how I fell into addiction and all those things. But at the end of the day, what really took me down was a dependency on opiates. And so I always like to compare it because today there's so many documentaries, there's so many TV shows. Like if you've seen Dope Sick, that's pretty much like my story to a T. I just watched a new one on HBO Max about pill mills in Florida. And I mean, that was very, you know, representative of what I looked like, you know, about 15 years ago and the struggles that I fell into. But, you know, I was a business guy and my job was to take folks out and earn their business. So I was a salesperson, really. And the opiates gave me kind of a rush and a euphoria. And for a while, I thought they were helping me do my job until they weren't. But I became a 50 pill a day drug addict.
Wow.
And my life was in complete darkness and devastation. And you can just think of down and out, darkness, lost everything. That was me. And thank the Lord, I was intervened on in April of 2011, sent to a treatment center. Felt an unbelievable calling, if you will, a spiritual calling to help other men initially, and then eventually women and their families through this journey of this thing called sobriety and changing your life. And so I took everything that I'd ever learned from my dad and everything that I found through marketing and sales and kind of put it all into this thing called Hope is Alive. And February of 2013, opened our first home here in Oklahoma City and invited 5 other guys to come and live with me, and created this holistic long-term program with my wife. And it's been very successful. We've had a lot of people that we've been able to help, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? I mean, we're in an epidemic of addiction, so unfortunately, like, there is so many people to help, but thankfully, we've been able to help a lot of people at the same time through our mentoring homes, now of which we have 25 in 12 cities in 6 states, over 200 men and women that are in our program across the country. And about halfway through this past 10 years, we began to help the families as well through this thing called Finding Hope. These are free support groups for moms and dads and loved ones. We have over 40 of those across the country, many of which are right here in Oklahoma. So there's a long intro, but that's a little bit about me and what we do.
Yeah, no, it's perfect, because then, we spent, I think it was like 45 minutes an hour in the previous episode going through the whole story, right? Which I really encourage people to go listen to, because it is an incredible story, and, the things that you've gone through to get to here today, and, the things that you can relate with people, right? Every people that you meet and that become great friends, and you take golfing, or you hand out drinks at the marathon, whatever it is, like, yes, it is not great to be, to have all these people come to you and have all these centers because there is something wrong. But the great thing is you're doing a good thing, right? You're there for a reason, and you're making lives better. And, even when me and you were out at Tulsa a year ago, right? We're driving around in the pouring down rain on the golf course.
It was a great day, by the way.
Fantastic. It was
so cool.
For a Taylor's Foundation event. And, there are people coming up to you and, just kind of, just the people that you probably don't think have a dependency in alcohol, right? And it's kind of like a taboo thing to talk about it.
Yes.
You pull you aside and say, hey, can here's my card, can we have a conversation? Or, I've been sober for 5 years, the greatest thing's ever happened to me. Like, there's so many people that could probably, and you probably have a million stories of this too, right? It's like, it's not just, the person who is really, really struggling, they're down and out, they're miserable, they're depressed. You could look at that person and think they probably have an alcohol problem, right? It's kind of easy to spot that.
Absolutely.
Or an addiction of something. But it's probably the guys who come to you that, like, they look like they have their life together.
That's right.
Right? That really, like, I am doing the right thing here, because if these guys are coming to me, then I must be doing something right.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest parts of my story. I was a full-time employee. I was a vice president of a company. I was the son of a pastor. And so who was going to help that person?
Right.
There's a lot of amazing services, and here we are kind of downtown-ish in Oklahoma City. A lot of amazing organizations for indigent folks, homeless, those that are trying to fight their way out of poverty, and there are a lot of those across the country. When we started this, there wasn't a lot of people, organizations that were helping suburban families, if you will. Not the down and out, but maybe the up and out, the middle class. And again, I'm the kind of the persona of that. And so I believe that we have been kind of called for such a time as this, as the opiate epidemic has made its way to the suburbs and the heroin, and now here we are with fentanyl, and it just keeps getting worse. And what I learned and realized is, addiction doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what your last name is, what your bank account looks like, where you live, what you drive. It does not discriminate. And Mike, it is crazy to go into literally any environment and have those people pull you aside. And I learned that really, really early on, that quite frankly, as the philosopher Notorious B.I.G. would say, more money, more problems. And so I realized that, early on, that I was going to get calls from people that I knew their last name. I knew who they were. Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing, by the way, when you don't know exactly what to say, but you're being called to be the one that's like the subject matter expert. And I just encourage anybody that's in that position, you just got to step into it with faith and with confidence and believe you were chosen to answer that question. And there's nothing more powerful than your story. And that's what I've always leaned on. I might not have all the answers, but here's how I did it. Here's what worked for me. Here's what I've seen work for other different people. And when you're working with addiction and folks that are struggling, the best thing that you can do, draw out that firm boundary line, shine a light on the problem, hold firm to what you think they need to do, and love them throughout the process. But yeah, I could tell you tons of stories of folks pulling me aside. And that day when we were on the golf course, I can think about 2 or 3 people who did that, who are today thankfully supporters of what we're doing, and hopefully we've been able to help their families.
Yeah, definitely. So, 2 years since we last recorded, catch us up to date. What's happened in the last 2 years other than a pandemic?
Yeah, that is very true. Well, we've opened a ton more houses. So like I said, we're up to 25. We've expanded into some states outside of Oklahoma, further expansion in North Carolina, made our way down to the continent of Texas in Dallas-Fort Worth, and opened a home there, and expanded west into Colorado Springs, and beginning to help as many folks as we can there. But I mean, the biggest thing personally is I had a child, had a baby, and that's probably changed my life, obviously, more than anything. And the biggest and best news, our little boy who's carrying my name, Lance Lang II. We call him LA. He's just been the light of our life and changed everything about us. And so I think that's probably the biggest news personally, professionally. Again, opening as many homes as we can, opening as many support groups as possible, and trying to help folks. And you touched on the pandemic, and I think we're still living in the after effects of that in a major way. And if you don't mind, I'll jump right into that.
Yeah.
I'll never forget hearing a story of a guy that just graduated our program in Tulsa, and he'll tell it. He was sent home to work, like so many of us were, and began to, instead of drinking a glass of wine at night, began to pull that glass or two into 4 o'clock, into 3 o'clock, into 2 o'clock, into 1 o'clock. And, it's easy to hide that on Zoom calls. And I am afraid that is the epidemic inside the pandemic, if you will. And we are still seeing the effects of work at home and all the things that it does in isolation, a lack of community, and a lack of accountability. And so, again, I'm not against working from home. I understand that. And everybody I interview nowadays asks me how much they can work from home. I get the freedom and flexibility that provides, especially as a parent of a youngster. But for those that might have the affliction of addiction and potentially struggle with vices like that, you have to be very, very careful. And that young man, that alcoholism slowly began to overtake his life. And the truth is, he lost his marriage for a moment, and he lost custody of his child for a moment. And this was a guy in the military, this is, again, not the stigma that you're thinking of maybe in your mind. This is just a normal guy like me and you, who had to go through a custody battle. I mean, which is wild to think about, but that's what happened. And so, we're trying to figure out how we serve that population the best that we can, but we're still seeing the impacts of the pandemic.
Yeah. And it's, and I think, for me, right, like I got a lot of family back home, and it was a lot worse, I think, in the UK, because people generally like they were locked down for Europe was like pretty locked down for kind of 8+ weeks, right? Like furloughed. Whereas out here we could still run around and do our thing, but a lot more people working from home, and like you said, it's a lot easier to hide it in a Yeti cup or a cup of whatever. People just think you're drinking water, right?
Exactly.
Not like wine or beer or whatever, or vodka. Whatever it is, like no one knows. It's very easy to hide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I hit it a lot. Yeah. And so one of the things that we have been trying to do is leverage the technology to help people. And so we started a thing during the pandemic called HIA Online. Okay. And as we look back on it, it was kind of like a beta test to see. I think everybody was trying some version of online, trying to figure out how do we operate, how do we still help people, we're in a business, how do we continue to sell, whatever it might be. And so we started a version of that, beta tested it for about a year, put it on the shelf, and now we're about to bring it back and roll it out to corporations, starting here in Oklahoma City first, and having conversations with some of our heavier partners about what it would look like to extend a 90-day version of what we do, only online. But the difference is that you'd be in a group environment. Okay. And so you have some accountability. You're meeting several days a week. We would even work to facilitate some version of drug testing. Now you can do saliva tests. I know you probably don't know, this is not your world. You can do a saliva test on camera and then show the results. Wow. So there's kind of ways that we can help people stay accountable. And ultimately, again, we're trying to find creative ways to help people find sobriety and live the life that they've been called to live.
Yeah.
And so online is a version of that is, again, kind of the rollover effects of the pandemic.
Okay.
And that has bled into mental health in a major way, and just various amounts of struggles for people.
Yeah. So is that kind of just like, so, like a big corporation comes in, let's say Hobby Lobby for some reason, for example, they come in, they say, hey, we want to work with you to provide this service for our employees, and then you just come in and run it. And
I think it's like 2 or 3 different possible service offerings, if you will. Number one, we want to provide resources and referrals for the senior leadership. So if somebody has a struggle anywhere, it could be an employee, it could be employee's cousin or father. Like, we want to make sure they have the best route to connect with the right resources. And as a leader, you're only as good as your resources, your referrals, where you can connect somebody to help and health that is going to work for them. So we want to be that for corporations, like we have been for churches for the past 10 years. And we have over 100 church partners that we do that with already. So that will be kind of the first offering. The second offering will be quarterly education, awareness, prevention, training, roundtables, meetups, small groups, large presentations, emails, whatever way works for the culture of the company. The last prong of that will be the HIA online. And for those that might self-disclose that they have a problem, for those that might, get caught in a drug test, for the warehouse worker, for the oil field worker, for the painter, the plumber, whatever it might be, that is struggling, and maybe they got a DUI and they're working their way back into some trusting situations. Whatever the case is, if addiction rears its ugly head, we want to provide them an opportunity that, in a sense, where they might not be able to move into one of our homes and stay for 18 months because of whatever the case might be. They'll still have an outlet that's trusted for them to find help in a 90-day period.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned mental health as well, right? Like, obviously these two things kind of go hand in hand, but fight kind of curing addiction and working with someone to get away from that, and also working on their mental health. Like, that's a lot to take on.
It is,
right? And you can tackle one, but the other kind of is it's just wavy. It's like having the devil on the shoulder, right?
Exactly.
You could be really good at one, and the other one, your mental health, you're like, I haven't drunk, or I haven't had a pill, or whatever it is, or whatever your vice is, but I'm mentally miserable.
Yes.
Right? So how do you go about putting both of those together? And it's a fine line,
It is a fine line. I mean, the first thing is, if it's there above our level of care, then we're going to refer out and we're going to connect with a professional. And mental health is so fuzzy and blurry, it's really hard to navigate. So we want to make sure they're connected to the right resource. I think for us, and where we land, where we can serve people the best way, is to help them live a life of sobriety, to help them clear the brain fog, to allow their brain to heal. And then what I have seen is that some of those mental health diagnoses can begin to fade away. It's the chicken and the egg. Did the mental health cause the addiction? Did the addiction cause the mental health? It's not uniform across the board. However, I do believe there is a certain population, when you begin, think about it, when you begin to stop abusing alcohol and what it does to your mind, when you begin to break that dependency on a substance that you've been with for 10 years, you begin to heal the trauma that caused it. You begin to have life skills again. You find your purpose and your passion. You have a job. You have a budget. You have friends and families. Your faith is restored. That does wonders. Maybe just one of those does wonders for your mental health, not to mention the combination of all of that. So, do we help those that have mental health struggles? Absolutely. But our primary focus is chemical or substance use dependency.
Sure.
And we do believe that, and we have seen that a lot of folks, when that is worked on and healed, if you will, and a program is established, we've seen depression fall away. We've seen anxiety fall away. We've seen a lot of those mental health struggles begin to fade away. And we also know that you have to work at keeping that at bay, right? And I'm 12 years sober.
Yeah.
Do I have bouts with depression at times? Absolutely, I do. I think there's an epidemic of loneliness out there. People that want more connection, want more community, even post-pandemic. I have to continue to work at that, or I can suffer with anxiety and depression just like anybody else. And so, but you clear those substances, you work on that trauma, and then you continue to work other parts of your life to maintain mental health.
Yeah. Is there anything that's kind of like getting a lot worse recently? I mean, I know you kind of referenced fentanyl a little bit. Like, is that kind of like the big thing at the moment?
I think it's the scariest thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I had breakfast with a guy yesterday, no substance abuse in his life. And the first thing he says is, what do I tell my kids right now? I'm scared for them to sleep over at somebody's house and a mom break open a pill bottle and you don't know what's inside of it. And so I think there's fear around that, and rightfully so. I think it's one thing to be talking about somebody picking up something on the streets, and there's another thing about talking about somebody having something at school or a child being scared of fentanyl. I think the main thing that we must do is just be incredibly aware of what's happening in our society, to talk about it as much as we possibly can, and to realize that we're in a time where we need to be very careful about what we're ingesting in any way, shape, or form. I can tell you 6 friends that I've lost over the past 6 months to fentanyl overdoses. I looked on the way in here, 1,027 people died of overdoses in Oklahoma in 2022. That's just last year. And so over 1,000 people, which 22% increase over the year before. That's second in the country in the percentage of increase. And so we're kind of still, right in the heart of this problem, and we got to be really, really careful about it. Yeah. And so, education is really important. You need to talk about this in your business. You talk about it in your home. You need to be wise of what's going on. And we need funding. We need support. All the organizations that are out fighting this, and we need to recognize this is a huge community public safety issue right now.
So what is why are we number 2? Like, what is the cause of that? Where's this coming from? Is it easy to get access here? Like, why is that?
I mean, I don't know if it's just our relation to geographically to Mexico, where this is coming across, and here we are, Texas, Oklahoma, right there on the brunt of it. I think a lot of it is just the fact that we've led the country in addiction stats for many years. Yeah. And so every single person I could tell you about that's died that I know about, they weren't going to buy fentanyl. They were buying an Oxycontin off the street. They were doing cocaine. They might have, who knows what, but they were doing some other substance that was laced with fentanyl.
Gotcha.
And so fentanyl test strips are really important. I saw the billboards that are going around the city right now. Those are really important to talk about. And I think I've even saw something where they're going to put vending machines in rural areas across Oklahoma for people to buy fentanyl test strips. And again, it's kind of a weird thing to say, hey, go test your drugs before you do it. Yeah. But I mean, that's just kind of the world that we're living in. And until that person's ready to take a step to change their life, I mean, that's certainly a precautionary step that they can take. But Mike, I don't know why. Yeah. I mean, I wish I did. People ask me all the time, where's this stuff come from? I mean, I could tell you the documentary I watched of, Vice News that told me where it came from, but other than that, I couldn't tell you. Yeah. All I know is that the more we talk about this, the more people are aware of the help that they can get, the more folks that we can help.
Yeah. So, have you connected with Reggie Whitten? Do you know Reggie?
I've had a couple different meetings lined up in both the past month, and both of them got rescheduled.
Yeah, he was on the podcast a couple of months ago, and obviously he's very involved in.
Absolutely, I'm definitely familiar with Mr. Whitten, and they've been supportive of the organization. And I think as we talk about school education, which I know is one of his passions, and the films that he rolled out, that's why I've been trying to get in a room with him and talk about how we can work together.
I'd like to just be a fly on the wall in that room, because you two together would really make something happen for sure, because those what he's doing and what you're doing, it seems like a perfect mix. Tell me about leadership. Can't be easy, right? Doing what you do, growing everything you have, more houses, different states. Like, it's easy when you probably have 3 houses in Oklahoma City. You can get to everyone in that day, right? Within 10, 20, 50 minutes, whatever it is. But expanding into different states and stuff, like that's, you got to put a lot of faith in your house leaders and everything like that too. So tell me about kind of like your leadership journey.
Yeah, I think it's been ever evolving and ever changing. We're at 67 employees operating in multiple different states and several different, levels of leadership. And those aren't brags. Those are just like facts that make it really, really a dynamic struggle. And so for founders, especially who, started doing everything, it is a journey of trust and a journey of letting go. I mean, you're just every single day trusting someone with your baby and letting go of the trust to allow them to lead it. But it's also part of, what gives me joy and passion is to see somebody step into their calling. And so 90% of our workforce has come from our program. And so we're giving men and women the opportunity to live out what they feel spiritually called to do, just like I did. And so that's really, I think that gives my wife and I a great sense of pride. But I think as a leader, I've learned that everything rises and falls on leadership. It's a very common saying, but it's so true. And if I am not developing myself, I have to lead the way. I've got to be listening to the most podcasts. I need to be reading the most books. I need to be talking to the most mentors. If there's anybody in my organization that's doing more of that than me, that's great, and I'm super stoked about it. But that means I'm probably not doing my job to push myself to be the very best that I can be. And that's what I've been trying to do, is make sure that I am setting the pace. Talk about running the half marathon. I'm setting the pace on leadership development. And if I can be in the best place that I can be, mind, body, spirit, then I trust, and I'm a spiritual guy. I believe that God's going to give me what I need to lead at another level. And that level continues to grow, and that trust has to continue to grow in myself. Yeah. And I think sometimes you don't have to fake it till you make it, but you've got to step in with confidence to know that, you can do it, and that you have been given a sense of influence no matter what position you're in. People are going to look to you, and they're going to believe what you have to say. And so step into it with confidence. And one of my mentors, Pastor Craig Rochelle, I always remember what he said on this podcast. He said, you as a leader, you can reserve the right to change your mind. And so you don't have to be perfect. And Mike, I've learned that in a huge way. I've been able to go back and say, hey, I thought we were going to do this. I thought we were going to open this amount of homes. I thought we were going to go to this state. I thought we were going to open this service line of programs or this event. But I realized that, we're actually needing to go this way or that way. And it's okay to change your mind. And I think people that are following you, I think they respect that when you're willing to say, hey, I think we might have made a mistake, or we went down a path that we shouldn't have gone. And so I just say, constantly growing and reading and listening. And the cool thing about this phone is it's a university on steroids of anything you want to learn. And there's so much great stuff on leadership development, and just pushing myself to be the very best version of myself. And it's an uncharted territory. I don't know where we're going. So I've got to find the people that have been there. And there's nobody that's been exactly in growing a residential recovery program nationwide. There's not any of those out there, but there are people that have dabbled in the different areas. And so it's those kind of folks that I'm seeking out and asking for advice and being willing to let him speak into my life.
Yeah. What's the book of choice at the moment? What are you reading?
I'm reading, it's Ed Milet's book, and I will open it right now. It's one more. It's that one more, Power of One More. And I've got 51 minutes left on it right now. And so I'm into Milet right now. I've got Discipline is Destiny that I've listened to a little bit. Ryan Holiday's one of his newer ones as well. And I would say this is an older book for leaders that are out there and they're trying to come up with the right motivation to maybe end something. I read Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud, and it was really helpful for me. I think the truth about leading a growing organization is not everybody's going to be able to go with you that started with you. And that's been a really heavy realization for me recently. And those staff members that started this journey, or even came in the second iteration, they might not be able to take you to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh iterations. And Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud has helped me kind of tangibilize that's okay, and how to go about it, and to be able to make endings in a way that you don't kill the relationship. Right. And that's important as a leader. And I think that's been a big thing for my wife and I, is realizing that not everybody's going to be able to go into the next phases with you, maybe the promised land, if you will.
So you're listening to the audiobooks, are you a podcast guy as well?
Oh yeah. Okay. I don't read anything.
It takes too much time.
I'm listening all the time to to all kinds of pods and definitely to books.
Yeah. You have a podcast of choice at the moment? I mean, Ed's podcast is pretty epic.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a huge Groeschel guy. So Craig's podcast is something I'm always into. I will tell you a couple kind of just relaxing ones, because I think you need those as well. It's kind of like the entertaining part of it. I mean, of course, I listen to some Joe Rogan, I listen to some Stephen Furtick. There's this one called The Rewatchables.
Okay.
It's on. So, do you like the movie The Karate Kid?
I had never seen it.
You've never seen it?
I mean, I've seen clips, but never sat and watched the entire movie, no.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Well, give me a movie that you loved growing up.
I can't think of any, to be honest. You put me on the spot. I mean, let's just think of... let's go recent. Top Gun, the new Top Gun.
Exactly. So the first Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
They would call it a rewatchable. This podcast goes through all those old classic movies, and they kind of, break them down, talk about different categories. Who could have been the actor? Who were they talking about? What were the rewatchable clips? And for me, it's kind of like brain candy. I mean, it's just fun. Yeah. And so, like, especially Friday, we're recording this on a Friday. I might go for a run this afternoon and throw in like a rewatchables pod that allows me to just like be okay and not feel like I'm just to take a break from the constant leadership journey. Right. And I'm not saying I'm just always doing that, but I am really trying to get better in every aspect of my life. And so that's a good pod to have some mental breaks and some self-care.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like for me, I'm kind of like that too. And I'm kind of always listening to something, but at the same time, I need to throw on a golf podcast or, I like cars. So it's, guys talking about car stuff. Like I need to throw, or just listen to music. Like
Fairway Rowing's on. I don't know if you've heard Fairway Rowing. That's a golf podcast. That one was on my list as well. And so, those kind of things are good self-care pods.
I was listening to one recently. It's called Founders. Do you know?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Oh, it's so good. It's kind of like you need to get. It's just one guy basically who just reads a book every week, and then he just like breaks the book down. But he's very good at it, and it's just him telling you about the book and some of the stuff that he's kind of researching all these people and Rockefellers and the people, like the one recently I was listening to it was kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger and talking about him and like a book that was written by his first girlfriend, basically when not his first girlfriend, but like the girlfriend he was dating while he was coming up, and like who he was, and he grew up like with no electricity, like, no running water in the house. And
I just watched the Netflix doc on him. Right? Yeah, it was great. And you watch that, like if someone can do that, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he was telling her like I'm going to be a movie star, and like. I mean, power to you. Yeah, it's an amazing story, and frankly, like I watched it a couple of weeks ago, and I was motivated. I mean, I try to find the silver lining, the leadership side of it in everything that I watch. What, again, spiritually speaking, maybe what I'm feeling God speaking to me about through whatever I'm watching. And so I'm watching the Netflix Arnold Schwarzenegger one, and he's talking about his struggles. Like he's had some public stuff, right? And he said, what, for me, I've just got to get up every day and keep working and stay busy and not allow my mind to go back to that, because if I do, then I will tear myself apart. I will fall back into this dark place. And I know it might seem like a weird thing that I took away from it, but that's what I did. Like, hey, sometimes you just got to get up and keep moving forward and stay busy and not dwell so much on that. And I think what I took also away from that is life is a series of seasons.
Yes.
Talk about a guy who's had a lot of different seasons. And of course, that's how that documentary was broken up in the three major parts of his life. But here I am, 40 years old, and I know that I've still got another 2 or 3 seasons in front of me, and just trying to make the best out of this life that I've been given, and not allow failures, not allow broken relationships, not allow regrets to keep me from what that next season looks like.
Yeah. Do you watch the Conor McGregor documentary? Have you seen that yet?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
We've watched all of it.
Surprised how it wasn't like a magical ending. Like he's injured all the time.
Exactly.
I was like, wait.
Yeah.
I had to rewatch it a couple of times to actually get the whole thing.
I loved watching it because, frankly, I guess I had forgotten about those last 3 fights. So I had no idea what was going to happen, which is always good when you're watching something like, oh, what's going to happen next? But my wife and I watched it and we loved it. And again, like, he has a lot of money. Yeah, he says dumb things or whatever. But, dude, the dude works. I mean, he was grinding.
Addicted to,
I mean, it was crazy. And I just felt like, people don't understand what it looks like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
They think people get it overnight, or they might just have it naturally. Most people who get to that place have really put in the work. Do they have natural ability? Yes, but he has put in the work, and I was very, again, captivated. Find the lesson in whatever it is. Do you subscribe to everything? No, but you find those silver linings, those takeaways, and you try to apply them to your life. And I thought that was a very motivating, captivating story to see what he'd been through. And obviously your heart broke as he got hurt, and you want to see him come back and do it again. And I love the scenes where he was in the church, and kind of just seeing a different side of him as well. And I thought that was really unique as well. So.
Yeah, well, and the other thing I took away too is like you're seeing him be a family man, right? Like he has like a few kids during that time, right? And you're like, hang on a second. Like I'm used to seeing this guy, who's pretty funny, but like, he kind of just degrading his opponents on, all the time at press and weigh-ins or whatever, and playing mind games, and then tries to obliterate them in the octagon, and eventually, loses and gets injured, and is so frustrated when he gets injured, and because like that is his life, right?
Yes.
But then it cuts, and he's just like chilling with his baby.
Yeah.
He's like, this is the greatest thing ever, and he's just like holding his son. He's like, hang on a second.
Which is great perspective for a workaholic like me as well, and who can, just like anybody else, get their identity misaligned in what they do, and being able to pull back and realize, probably what's most important, obviously, your spouse and your children, and the legacy that you're going to leave behind through them, just as much as you are through the podcast, through the ministry, through the business, through the funds, money, whatever it might be. And I think he was beginning to get a taste of that and realizing, that's true legacy. And I love too, like he seemed like a family guy,
right? Like
a family man. And you can have everything in the world, but it's really those people that are around you at the end of the day that makes your life what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of parlaying into some fitness stuff. You mentioned running. Running seems like your outlet. Tell me about getting HIA involved in the Oklahoma City Marathon.
Well, I ran the half marathon. I've done it 3 times. So the first time was 3 years ago, and I had never been a part of it in any way, shape, or form, and I was absolutely blown away by it. I thought it was the coolest thing for our city, and honestly, maybe even the best kept secret still from thousands of people that have not participated. Even though there's 20,000 runners and 100,000 people down here, whatever it is, I still think a lot of Oklahomans haven't got to see the magic of it. And so for me, I walked away by saying, I'm going to be involved with this every year. And if I am, that means Hope is Life's going to be involved with it as well. And then next year we did a water stop at Westminster, the church. And we brought out, 100 recovering drug addicts in their NHA shirts. And, that doesn't hurt anything, as well as 20,000 people are running by seeing our logo. So there's always branding efforts there too. But I mean, the point was like, we were going to be a part of giving back to the city, and we were going to be a part of this really special moment. And so the marathon's been great to sponsor our little 5K as well that we do. And so we were we got a water stop again this year. We heard that, we were one of the best the past 2 years, most energy, a lot of fun things. And, recovery is about giving back. That's a huge pillar of what we do. Getting out of yourself. Yeah. Getting up at 5:30 in the morning and making your way down here and avoiding traffic and
getting in before the road's closed.
Exactly. Right. Wearing the gloves, handing out the water when it could be cold, all those things, but you're serving other people. And I fell in love with the event and just the culture, the feeling, the city coming together, hopefully the state coming together and being proud of that. And so I was really trying to prepare to run the full this year. And I got plantar fasciitis in both feet about a month beforehand. And so I got shots in my feet, all kinds of stuff I won't tell you about. But at the end of the day, felt like I could only do the half and be able to make it through. And that was with quite a few stops and stretching my calves on the curbs along the route. But finished the half marathon, saw you, and so many people along the way. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing, and so proud of the board and the team at the memorial that puts that together, and proud to be an Oklahoman.
Yeah, it's such a great day, right? And this year was the first year that I was involved from like a handing out water and a race stop perspective. And I will do it every year that I have, I have the ability to do it, because it's like, we're at the end, right? We're at like mile 23, 24 or 11 for the half. And you're just like, It's the point where a lot of people are really doubting themselves.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
they're like, why am I doing this?
Absolutely.
You know, like I don't have like Taryn, my wife ran it, and she came through and she's like, I'm overheated. Like, you know, and I didn't realize this until after, but you know, she came back when I met her at the finish line. She was like, just after I passed you, like I had to like heave and throw up. I was like, oh, great. Like, thanks for holding it in.
Yeah,
while you saw me,
exactly.
you know, like, you know, give you a kiss on the cheek and keep running and keep going. You can do it. But, you know,
That'd have been great if she just threw up on you.
Yeah,
That would have been
exactly.
really
Yeah,
funny.
like, great to see you. Here's a bottle of water. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, which might be lessons for when we eventually have
It's
kids.
a great test of perseverance, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it is.
At every level.
Oh, my good. Half marathon, full, whatever you're doing, and getting, because there inevitably will be multiple times where you want to quit. And I'm not saying that's the case for all those top end guys and gals, but I would say most of us in the middle, and that's the majority of the runners. Like they're trying to do their first half, they're trying to do their first full. And I mean, there's so many times where you're wanting to quit after you kind of get through the pink cloud of the first 5 miles or so, and just being able to do difficult things. This is something I've led our team through many times, you know, in this saying, I can do difficult things. And so a part of kind of the therapeutic nature of where I am today, long distance running, if you will, has been a very therapeutic for me. It's been great self-care for me. I get a lot of downloads, a lot of vision when I'm running, and maybe it's the pre-workout, maybe it's the endorphin. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's the runner's high. But I just get a lot of download while I'm running, and so it's definitely become an outlet for me. And the memorial will be a part of that. I also did a Spartan race last year.
Oh, well, just like a
What's
bunch
the
of
obstacle stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a Spartan Beast, which is a half marathon with 35 obstacles outside of Dallas. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Hardest thing I've ever done. I was cramping in both legs to the point where I couldn't walk, and there wasn't a water stop anywhere, and I'd eaten everything in my bag. So again, I can do difficult things. I just had to like stomach the fact that I couldn't run. I was just going to have to kind of waddle my way to where my legs were functioning again. But as a person in recovery, but really anybody, I think, that's trying to continue to challenge themselves, I've tried to put one big thing a year on the calendar, if not two. And so it's the memorial and the Spartan, or I've climbed a couple 14ers mountains the past couple years as well. I think that for me, I need something to look forward to. I need something to train for. And I'm an experienced junkie. You know, I'm a drug addict, right? So I really get off on those kind of high mountaintop moments, you know, rehab, speaking in front of huge crowds, climbing the mountain. And I think my wife doesn't love that about me, but I need that a couple times a year to be a sane human being.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, you need something. It's great to have something to work towards, right? And if it's just twice a year that you dedicate 6 months to work towards something, and then after that you have a little recovery time, and then you dedicate the next 5.5 months to something, it keeps you focused. It keeps you doing something. And if it's about your health, right? It's. If you were kind of prepping for a food eating contest, it'd be a little different, right?
Exactly.
To climb a 14er. So, I'm sure you, but at the same time, it's the time that it takes away from things, right? The time, the dedication it takes to train for a marathon or, a Spartan race or climbing, whatever it is, that's time away from something.
Absolutely. I mean, you're hitting me on the week where I started training for the Spartan. So I've completely changed my morning schedule. I'm getting up, not super early, but 6:25, and that allows me to do what I need to do in the morning, because I've learned that I can't do it in the evening. And by the way, it's 150 degrees outside. But it does. I mean, it takes prioritization, and it takes a great partner. All of those things. But I believe challenging us is a kind of part of my ethos. Like I push our people to be challenged a lot. Jump in the cold tub, do the sauna, run the race, go talk to the donor, make the big ask, step into the uncomfortable meeting, make the phone call, do the TV interview. I just think we grow when we challenge ourselves. So do the podcast, and that's where we really tap into our unleashed potential. And we only got one life, so let's go.
Exactly. So, finishing up 10 years, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a hell of an achievement. What do we have to celebrate this year, and then what's coming?
I think the biggest, I'll give you the most important things to celebrate, and that's like, it's unbelievable the amount of sobriety that we've been able to see and the lives changed. But I think the stat that I'm most proud of over the past 10 years has been over 700 children reunited with sober moms and dads, which is a pretty special thing that you might understand if you see what we do, you follow us on social, but maybe it's that underlying thing that you don't quite realize is that a lot of these folks have kids, and their kids could be in custody somewhere with grandma and grandpa or whatever it is. And so 700 plus children that have been reunited with sober moms and dads. Really proud of that. And that is one of many things that we're going to celebrate. And we're doing 2 huge events in August, the first full week of August, to celebrate what's happened over the past 10 years. And one of those is a Celebration of Hope event. That's what we're calling it. It's at the Cowboy Hall of Fame, Tuesday night, August 8th. You can go to HIA10.com. There's only a few tickets and tables available, but we'd love for you to come to that. And that's going to feature Tim Tebow, the one and only Heisman Trophy winner, Tim Tebow, and an up-and-coming Christian music artist named Ben Fuller, who's got an amazing story of recovery as well. And I'm super excited about that night. That's kind of a more of a, again, ticketed, private gala event to celebrate and to thank the supporters and all that kind of stuff on Tuesday night. And Friday night, August 11th, is a big celebration for the community. It's a free event. It's called Night of Hope. You can go to nightofhopeokc.com to read more. It will also feature Tim Tebow, but it will be free, and it's at Crossings Community Church. Yeah. And we're going to celebrate in a huge way. So if you are in sobriety and you want to come and celebrate it, that's a great night to come. If you love someone that struggled with addiction and you need resources, or you just need hope, and want to get connected to Hope is Alive, that's a great night for you to come. And if you just might want to hear Tim Tebow, or if you want to come and worship one night at Crossings, like, it's going to be 2,000 plus people. It's going to be a fantastic night, August 11th.
Good. How do you get connected with Tim Tebow? How does that happen?
People ask me that every day, and I just tell them very simply, you get on the website, you fill out the thing, and you pay him.
You pay him.
I mean, at the end of the day,
come on down.
Is there a level of vetting as an organization?
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. I talked with his folks 2 or 3 different times before they said yes.
Yeah.
And of course, negotiated rates and all that kind of thing that would come alongside someone of his stature and nature. But it is unique to have him twice. Yes. I'll tell you that, in 1 week. Now, he's not staying in Oklahoma City. He'll be kind of down and back and all over the place. He's a busy guy. But we're really excited to have him. We feel like he's going to... I've heard him actually at a gala about 2 months ago. I went and checked him out. And he killed. And he was so inspiring. And you would think that about a guy like that, but he was really inspiring. So no matter kind of what your belief system, or if you're a football fan or a Florida Gator fan or whatever, he is a guy that I think you all would have respect for, and inspired by, his love for people, what he's done through Night to Shine, helping those with special needs, and just talk about somebody that continues to put himself in challenging positions, trying to play baseball, trying to be a football player, being an analyst. I think you can respect that, and we're excited to have him.
Sick. Well, mate, thank you so much for coming down. Really appreciate it. For people listening, I'll put all links to the website, social media, any information about the events coming up. And congrats on 10 years.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Congrats on LA, man. That's,
yes.
You're a dad. Like, it's crazy.
The namesake.
So, it is the namesake. So for everyone listening, we will catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffees really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffeeford.net, and then on Instagram at diffeefordlincoln. This episode is presented by the Choctaw Nation. The Choctaw people have a rich history and a bright future. At the Choctaw Cultural Center, you can take part in a story 14,000 years in the making. Stroll through our immersive exhibits portraying Choctaw life from the moment our ancestors emerged from the Nani Weha in Mississippian homelands to the Trail of Tears, where we lost so many loved ones, and finally to the modern-day tribe making a positive impact on local communities throughout southeastern Oklahoma. Try your hand at our social dancing and stickball and learn more about our vibrant culture through demonstrations, workshops, and classes. The kids will have a blast in our Luxie Activity Center. The Choctaw Cultural Center is more than a museum. It's a living, breathing experience. Visit ChoctawCulturalCenter.com to plan your visit. This episode is brought to you by Hope is Alive. Hope is Alive exists to radically change the lives of drug addicts, alcoholics, and those who love them. Join us on August 11th at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum for a celebration of hope featuring guest speaker Tim Tebow and musical artist Ben Fuller. Find out more and get your tickets at HIA10.com.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.